All right. This wasn't exactly a productive week, so let's drink about it, shall we? Cheers. Welcome back, everybody, to me doing Weekly Navel-Gazing, where I talk about all the books I read last week and all the books I plan to read this week. And then I talk about all the videos I didn't make last week and the one that I made and all of that stuff. And then it all descends into mad rambling, as always. So yeah, what did I do last week? Read. Well, I did read a lot of books. Actually, I did read quite a few books with various results. So I did finish a reread of On Stranger Tides, and then I reread it again. So I read it twice within 1 week, which is, something. And I read The Pirates by George MacDonald Fraser, which I really enjoyed. It's a really fun book. Like, seriously, it's really fun. So I did that. And then I read some books about pirates, non-fiction books about pirates. Some were good, some were not. Pirate Women was not actually that good, unfortunately. Or maybe my problem was that at that point I had read too much pirate non-fiction stuff and know enough about history to get annoyed by the kind of things that some popular sort of non-fiction books sometimes do, where I'm like, oh, I can see where this is. I could have done this better, but technically I could not, but I know more than the author is telling me at this point, and that's never a good place to be in when reading fiction. That's something I read last week. What else did I read last week? I did read another book, which is another collection of pirate stories and pirate documents and so forth, and that was a mixed bag, because it's the kind of thing that you get sometimes, what with publishing being the way it is these days, and it was called The World's Best Pirate Stories or something like that. It's basically a collection of copyright-free material, mostly copyright-free material, that has been just like cobbled together into like one large ebook and audiobook, because you don't have to pay, licensing fees for most of it. It did have a small chunk from The Pirates by George MacDonald Fraser in it, which I assume is still copyrighted in some way or form, but, the rest, having excerpts from some Joseph Conrad stuff, Lord Jim, and having excerpts from Treasure Island, and even more stuff like that in your book doesn't cost you anything, and then you can push this out and so forth. So some interesting bits and pieces, not the best thing ever read, but it's, the kind of thing that sometimes happens. I also read The Utopia of Rules by David Graeber, which was really good. I've read some parts of it. It's a collection of essays, and some of them were in fact also included in a changed or edited version in last year's collection, The Ultimate Hidden Truth of the Universe, which is, or the world, one of those two sentences. But it's I highly recommend Utopia of Rules if you can get it. It is about bureaucracy and technology and stuff like that. And it does also look at science fiction and fantasy and books about it and so forth. So it was really interesting in that regard. I did enjoy that specific aspect very much. I also read David Graeber's Pirate Enlightenment, The Real Libertalia, which is another sort of essay collection. No, it's not an essay collection in this case. It's actually a almost coherent, like, historical text that David Graeber kind of spun out of the whole thing that ended up being the dawn of everything. And I read that one. It's about Madagascar and how piracy or pirates and different groups living in Madagascar at the time intersected and all of that, which is interesting because David Graeber's field work as an anthropologist was done in Madagascar, so he has already, he's written about different elements of Malagasy culture before, and, it was an interesting book. I enjoyed it. I had fun with it, and sometimes that's all that's needed. What else did I read? I did a quick reread of Men-at-Arms by Terry Pratchett, just to skip to the next one. I'm always reading one Terry Pratchett book. It's usually my bedtime reading, and obviously, or listen in this case, and obviously, since I fall asleep at that point, I figured I'd rather just like listen to the whole thing in one go, so I can put it aside again, move on to the next one. In this case, my current bedside read is now Feet of Clay, which is also a really good Terry Pratchett book. And what else did I read? Yeah, then I did reread once again on Stranger Tides, because I wanted to make a video about it. And then I started, and I haven't finished it yet, Speculative Whiteness by Jordan S. Carroll, which is a non-fiction book, an academic book on science fiction and the alt-right. Sounds fun, right? It's a good book so far. I really, enjoy is probably the wrong word here, but I very much appreciate what happens in this book so far, and I'm going to finish it probably today or tomorrow. It's not that long. And I finally started Death of the Author by Nnedi Okorafor. God's names, right? And I'm about halfway through that one, and it's intense. It's really intense. It is touching on so many different things at the same time that talking about it will be very, very interesting. It touches on disability and how disability intersects with your cultural background, your family background, all of these kind of things. And it obviously talks about what it means to write popular fiction, how that kind of intersects how we take creation. Deal with creators of art, like deal with artists these days, how that intersects with, social media, the culture industry, all of those things. It's a really, really good book, is what I'm saying, and I highly recommend you read it. It's certainly given me a lot of things to think about, especially, of course, with the whole disability part in there. Those things often, when they're done well, they do touch me on certain, emotional levels where I have to sort of do some self-reflecting, and we all know how much I hate that. So, yeah, really good book. That's what I read last week. I think that's all. What do I plan to read this week? Well, I'm going to finish Speculative Whiteness, and I'm going to finish Death of the Author. After that, I don't know yet. Probably more pirate stuff, because it turns out I'll still keep that thing going at least until the 7th of February is when I have the next doctor's appointment to look at my tooth. So until then, I'll still look like this. So probably more pirate stuff. I'm going to reread the Revenger trilogy, so far 3 books by Alistair Reynolds, which is Pirates in Space. Yes, I am planning to read The Adventures of Amina al-Sirafi, but I would need an Audible credit for that, and I can't afford one until the next month. So that one is pushed back until, I can afford it, which is frustrating, but here we are. Sometimes, money is tight. So yeah. And possibly other pirate books. I am not going to read Pirate Latitudes by, Michael Crichton. I don't want to deal with that guy. Just to put it clearly, I know a lot of you have recommended it. Maybe it's a good book. I wouldn't know. But Michael Crichton is the kind of author I have not read, and I don't think I will enjoy reading books by people that write, that deny climate change and then write their own critics into their books basically turn them into horrible people in books. That's not the kind of, writer whose mind I think can produce something worthwhile reading. Because that speaks of a very bitter asshole of a dude, and that does not necessarily create good art. No, anyway, my point is not Pirate Latitudes, possibly some other pirate books. There's certainly enough piracy going around in both fantasy and science fiction and historical fiction. There's some pirate stuff happening in The Baroque Cycle by Neil Stevenson, although that is a massive series of books, so probably not something I can do on the side. Possibly. Same thing goes, obviously, for Life Ship Traders by Robin Hobb, which obviously also does have a lot of pirate stuff going on in it. But those are, also massive books, so I wouldn't know. Maybe something else will come along in the next week that I remember that I wanted to read, and I'll just move over to that. Who knows? If there's stuff that you think I should read, you can always, tell me in the comments, and then I can tell you that I'm not going to read Michael Crichton. Or maybe you come up with something that I'm really interested in. There's always that chance, isn't there? So yeah, that's my reading plans. Let's talk about videos for a second. I made the video for Treasure Island, and it's up at this point. I am relatively happy with it. I recorded it once and then decided that I wasn't happy with it, and then I re-recorded it, and I was more happy with it, which is why it is up. And that's the only thing that I put up last week. I did also record a first version of a video on Stranger Tides. and I'm also not happy with it. So I'm going to try and re-record that either today or tomorrow, depending on how I manage to do that. But it's certainly coming along. Sometimes recording a video once kind of gives me the understanding of what I need to actually put in the video, but I need to do that first version of like getting it wrong to understand what I got wrong. And I hope that with On Stranger Tides, that's what happened. And there's more to talk about the pirate video stuff in a second, but let's talk about videos that I plan to do this week. Well, On Stranger Tides, right? Possibly also The Pirates by George MacDonald Fraser. Definitely worth talking about. I love that book. I think there's a lot of interesting things happening there, so I'll try to get it recorded. I also want to talk about Death of the Author by Nnedi Okorafor, and we'll see when I feel comfortable about talking about that one, because, yeah, it's, as I said, it's intense. It's definitely worth talking about, and I suspect not many people on BookTube will talk about it because, you know, BookTube being BookTube. So, yeah, I'm going to do that. I just need to figure out what to say, how to say it, and so forth, because, holy shit, there's a lot packed into that book. So, that one. Possibly I'll also talk about speculative whiteness, because, you know, it's an interesting topic. But those are ideas that I'll figure out during the week if I manage to do some recordings. We will also do a live stream, the regular live stream with, you know, beer and talking in the evening on Saturday, the 25th, I guess? Possibly? Man, this is bad. Yeah. That Saturday, which, whatever that might be. I'm really bad with these kind of, you know, date kind of things. So it might be the 25th. Should probably be the 25th. So that's when we'll do a live stream. I'll, you know, upload it or set it up later today, so you can already mark it in your calendars. And I'll try to do some, at least, you know, breakfast writing and productivity sprints. I do really enjoy them, and I really appreciate you guys hanging out with me in the morning if you can make it, because, you know, it helps me start the day, and that's really cool. So that's gonna happen video-wise. I am not going to work on the Mormonism video. And that's kind of, I think, sort of where we descend into the rambling stuff. I've been thinking about that, and I was thinking about making like an extra video about it, and then I kind of didn't want to do that. Maybe I'll still do that later if I have like more coherent thoughts about it. Certainly some of the things happening in say, Death of the Author kind of intersect with that as well. But see, the thing is that I want to return to the Mormonism video, and it's certainly the whole, like, tooth situation, the accident, all of that has certainly made my plans for the week and for the early beginning of the year. It's completely fucked them up, because my plan was to finish reading Redwall and then just, like, dig in and finally get that whole fucking Introduction to Mormonism video off my chest so I can move on and do other things. However, I don't feel confident or talking about the Mormonism, recording the Mormonism video right now, because there's, you know, I look very much like a derelict right now, and not derelict. Already we come to the problem with language, right? I have a very visible gap in my teeth right now, and the thing is, when we look at these kind of things, like these visible markers, like physical markers, like lost teeth are coded in a lot of ways in our society as a mark of poverty, as a mark of, or lack of social status, lack of, you know, care. All these things are kind of tied to the idea of having not all of our teeth. Teeth do mean a lot, which is, you know, why everyone flies to places where it's cheap and gets their teeth remade and stuff like that. We tie a lot of sort of like social cachet to teeth. I think that's wrong. It's fucked up, right? And there is that part of me that goes like, well, fuck it, we'll just do this. And if people don't believe me and don't think about the things I say because they feel that because I have a hole in my teeth, that makes me less of an authority or less worth listening to, then fuck them, right? That's what I think in it. I very much think that. It's the same reason why I do drink beer on stream and, you know, wear band shirts and don't necessarily do much more like that. Like, if you think that all those, like, external sort of markers, the way I dress, makes my opinions less worth listening to, that's on you. That's like prejudice that you need to get over with, because I know what I know, right? The problem, however, is, of course, that with the Mormonism video, there's a lot of, like, things I need to say and feel the need to speak about with the Mormon video. The message of that video is important to me, and it is potentially a video that people that have not watched my channel before, right? Most of you watching this video have seen me before. You know how I sound. You know the whole story of like why I don't have that tooth at the moment, all of that stuff, right? You know all of that. It doesn't impact you in that regard, I assume. You may laugh about it because it looks silly or whatever, but it doesn't impact your understanding of my personality and my background or anything of the sorts. But with a video about Mormonism, which is, its own community, has its own like viewership and also all of that, that is potentially the first thing that a lot of people will see of me. So I can't necessarily control that sort of those kind of impulses. And it may potentially damage the things that I want to say, or damage the impact of that video. And while I don't make videos to get like high numbers of views or anything of the sort, I do very much care about the things that I say, and I want the messages I put out there to reach people. And if my need to just go fuck 'em and ignore prejudice, which I think is a worthy goal in itself, and certainly one of the things that I try to do here is to fight back against these prejudices, right? But if that impacts the message of the video that I also want to say, to get out there, that's a very weird sort of conflict of interest that I don't know how to solve. So that's why I have put sort of like the Mormonism video on hold for now, because you see what I mean? It's weird to talk about that in a lot of ways. I took, that whole thing as an idea to then go and just record the pirate videos because, pirates are cool. It's an easy way of leaning into the thing, right? Leaning into that event. And that's, I think, the best thing I can do right now. It still drives me fucking furious that I can't do the things that I wanted to do and all of that. Don't get me wrong, I'm still mad. But it's my way of dealing with it is like leaning into it and going like, well, we'll do the pirate thing. Talking about Treasure Island, saying R a lot, drinking grog instead of that, waving around my saber, all of that bullshit, right? It's fun, it's comedic, and I can still talk about something because, yeah, it felt like the right thing to do, and I am happy with that decision. The problem is, of course, that I'm really incapable of doing that, right? There's several layers to this. On the one hand, I'm very anxious about this kind of thing. I record these videos out on my balcony. You have already seen that because turns out I can't swing a saber under my bed, which is one of those sentences that 8-year-old me would not have thought that 40-year-old me would still say and mean them, right? So there's that, and it's certainly an interesting fact. But I have to record them outside, and I am incredibly self-conscious about it. I'm self-conscious about dressing up, putting on a bandana, doing all of those things. That makes me feel weird, which is one of those problems, right? Like if you're in front of a camera, you have to overact, you have to be, larger than life for it to then compress into what you get on the other side of the screen, right? So it already makes me feel very self-conscious to do this in my room where no one else will hear me while I'm doing this right now as a physical person. I can separate that from, the video in my head. If I do that out on the balcony, there's potentially all these neighbors out there who can sit there and listen to me rant and whatnot. And that's scary. That's really fucking scary. So it always takes a while for me to actually press record and do the thing. And it makes it sometimes harder to focus on the things I want to say while I'm recording out there. So it's certainly a challenge, an additional challenge, I think. So that's one part. The other part is, of course, that I'm just incapable of just doing fun. I'm just not really good at it. So as soon as I started thinking about the pirate thing, I started also reading non-fiction books about pirates. And I started to figure out how to actually build up an argument around it and how to structure these videos and what to say in Treasure Island so I can then go back and refer back to it when I talk about On Stranger Tides and how to do the same with the pirates and so forth. Now, how to build all of that and how to add all these things that I now know about pirates or wasn't aware of before and that are important to pirate fiction and when it intersects with imperialism and colonialism and all these things. And suddenly it's not me dressing up as a pirate and saying "R" a lot, but it's me talking about, sexism and racism in pirate fiction and trying to, once again, educate people, I guess. And suddenly it begins to take over way too much time and research, and suddenly I'm back in that hole. But, partly an ADHD thing, partly it's probably a way for me to sort of overcome my insecurity when I can say, well, you may think it's silly that I dress up as a pirate, but at least I've read like 10 books on pirates, so who are you to criticize me for my opinions, right? It's a bit of a safety mechanism, I would argue, in a lot of ways. A defensive mechanism, I guess, at the same time. And that's obviously troubling because it gets in the way of actually getting the videos out. Possibly, it could make them less fun for you to watch. I wouldn't know about that part, but it's certainly something that I've been thinking about a lot recently while, going through this process at the moment. So I don't know where to take all of this. I just wanted to mention all of this so you kind of know where I'm at the moment mentally and why it took so long to get the On Stranger Tides video out, for example. Technically, I could have recorded this like 3-4 days ago, but now I have like all these other ideas, and then I spoke about it yesterday, and then I think I did not necessarily do justice to all the sort of conflicting elements that are tied up into that book. And I'm like, I want to get it right. And yeah, that's where we are. So, sorry, this got a bit longer and more serious than I thought it would, but that's kind of the brand, right? So anyway, thanks for sticking with me if you stuck with me this far. Thanks for bearing with my weird pirate diversions at the moment. I'll talk to you about something serious, like On Stranger Tides by Tim Powers, very soon. I promise. And, other stuff as well. I hope I can see, I hope some of you will join me for the live stream on Saturday. I hope it will be a good one. I'll be pretty fucking wrecked because I'm with friends on a brewery tour on the day before. But we'll see how things go. And I always appreciate those of you who can jump in for the productivity breakfast sprints in the morning where I drink tea and talk about stuff and sometimes even write. So yeah, all of that done. Thanks. I'll see you very soon. And until then, cheers.